uh, he was saying, Michael was saying in the chat that we should do a CoronaCon. And because I was saying that I would love to go and like just ring people's doorbells. I like just go to, go to Ed's doorstep, go to your doorstep, go to Steven's doorstep, and say, hey, let's do Corona Geek together, like at your place, And, so Michael was saying that we should do some sort of CoronaCon, and we just do it. I'm assuming he's saying we would do it, online, because he's saying casting live from CoronaCon 2015. To which I was saying that there's another developer community that has kind of grown up, and the platform's gone 1.0, and they're actually doing something called a Meteor Space Camp, and it's a guy in the community who's sort of like the developer evangelist or whatever of the community. I don't know if he's official or unofficial or whatever, but anyway, he's putting together this thing in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee.
It's a great name,
isn't it? It's
a fantastic town name.
Right. I mean, who does? Yeah, just for marketing purposes, right? It's got good production value. I mean, who doesn't want to go to Pigeon Forge, Tennessee? Anyway, so they're doing like a 2-day thing. They're doing what they call an unconference on one day, and then an open hack session on the other day. And they've got speakers and all this other stuff, and they've got like this cabin that they're going to be in, and there's like on-site people can be like. There's rooms in the cabin, so there's like
cool.
What do they call it? They call it Lone Wolf Suite. So you get for $649, you can do this Lone Wolf Suite, and it's just you, and you get a private room. And then
they've sold out of the Lone Wolves. They've sold out of the pack rooms. And they've sold half of their off-site stuff. So.
Well, and here's the thing: is that there was only 10 spots in the Lone Wolf to start with. 20 in the pack rooms, so if you wanted to bunk up bunk beds and stuff like that, there's 20 of those. And then off-site, they made 21 spots available. And so really, it's the whole thing is only supposed to be a very small group to begin with. I mean, if you consider 50 of your closest friends, cool. A small group. But I think it's a great idea.
We should do something like that. I keep thinking that we should do. I mean, I'm in New York, so of course I'm focused on that. But there's a few of us. There's a few, certainly developers, but also like ambassadors along the Amtrak Northeast corridor. So so I'm thinking like we should do something. I don't know.
Well, we got there's I think there's enough people to kind of get together and do a thing, and then. What was it? No, it's been several years now. But we did a thing where we did like a 6-hour hangout. I don't know if you ever saw that.
No. Was that something that Corona Geek did, or was that Corona Labs? I mean,
no, it was Corona Geek, but it was wow. Oh, I can't remember his name. Sorry if he's watching, but he's in Hawaii. He's got a dev shop in Hawaii, and he said, "Hey, we should do this." I can't remember what we called it, but it was a big event. And anyway, so what we did was we split it up, and we said, okay, well, we had 2 hours for kind of like East Coast. What was it? Yeah, we did East Coast, Central, and then we did a West Coast. But the West Coast was Hawaii and all that because the time zone. Business, and so
pretty big difference.
Exactly.
It's like six hours maybe, or
something. 6 or 7, and something crazy. So Jen Looper came on, and then she talked about she demoed her game and what she was developing at the time, and then she invited a designer to come in and talk about design. He demoed for a while, and then Brian Burton came on in the middle and did a stint, and then when we got to the West Coast stuff, of course, Hawaii joined on and did a presentation from there. So we'll have to go back and look in the archives, but it was one of the early shows, and
that's cool.
A 6-hour show. It was like kind of like okay, and so of course I was on for the whole 6 hours, so I was like,
oh man, that is a long day.
Yeah, but it was cool though. It was so cool that everybody was throwing in to make this thing happen. I'll have to go look at.
Corona Geek, coast to coast
Yeah, exactly. And,
and beyond.
oh, and there's Rob. Rob's here. Yeah, and I think I'm a big proponent of that, doing these hangouts, because as Michael alluded to, there's really no reason why we have to have a physical location. I mean, it's cool that we all going to get together and stuff like that, but there's also a lot of logistics that go along with that as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you've ever priced out a hotel or event space or anything, but they really like their event spaces. I mean, we're talking thousands of dollars just to get.
See, I'd almost love to go down home on it. Like I'm a big fan in the summers up here in the Northeast of the folk festival circuit, where it's like it's a farm somewhere and you pitch a tent. And I think that'd be great. Long weekend. If you had we need somewhere with electricity. It's not a folk festival, but it's if we got a barn somewhere and gather around a campfire with a cooler beer at night. And
yeah, I think it would be fun. I mean, and that's why I think that whole Pigeon Forge retreat business is kind of cool, just because.
It sounds like they got a little bit of that vibe going.
Yeah, exactly. A little bit of that, just sort of, we're just gonna get together and I can imagine. I've always been tempted just to pay up and go, just because, those are the early days of stuff. Like when you can really have conversations with people and don't have to worry about getting hung up in missing sessions or having overlapping content, or some of these events you go to and you almost can't get it all in.
Yeah, well, that's when it becomes a conference. And that's work.
Right. Yeah. I really like the unconference kind of thing here. I'm trying to find that. Man, I'm looking through all the archives here, going, where is that thing? So
Space Camp is a great name for it too.
Yeah. Well, so everything in the Meteor community is all kind of space related, right? So you've got telescope.
What is Meteor? Is it like a
Meteor's
platform for game?
It's a JavaScript. It's a cross-platform JavaScript development stack, right? So you've got kind of like in the web development space, you've got things like Node, or you've got Rails, or you've got PHP and MySQL or whatever, right? And there's a big movement. Yeah, and there's a big movement to use JavaScript on the server and on the client. And almost like what Chris Byerly has done with using Lua in the app and using Lua on the server, right? I mean, he's completely built that whole model out on the server side with Lua. So it's very similar to that. And so anyway, with Meteor, you get to do a lot of the things that with Meteor that you would have had to do manually as a developer on your own. So I'll give you an example. If you create a website and data changes in the database, then that information is automatically reflected on the screen. It's automatically refreshed. You get what they call a kind of a hot push, and you get kind of real-time information without having to write all the plumbing to do that. And it's like, in a lot of ways, kind of like Corona. Corona abstracts a lot of things and makes it easy to just kind of get in and build the things that you want to build without having to worry about all the plumbing,
Yeah.
And so from a web development standpoint, it's a great tool, and I'm using it for a client project right now, where I'm building a custom. What do they call it? Not a CR. Well, it's kind of a CRM, but it's a custom system where he can run his business off of it. And basically, it's a valet company, and they have customers and employees, and then jobs, and then those employees need to be assigned to jobs, and they need to be able to check their work schedule, and they need to see their pay history, and then the office needs to be able to run payroll and all these other things. And I'm using Meteor to build all of that. So And it's kind of cool. In the web development space, you can kind of, if you build for mobile, you can get a mobile piece as well.
Okay.
So not a native, but not native, right? We're still talking about HTML and CSS and all that
Just
kind of
responsive.
responsive. There's some native sides to it, but you're still using Cordova and all those types of things like that, which I'm not a big fan of, strictly speaking. But anyway, it's interesting, and then so there's a they've got they being MDG, the Meteor Development Group out in San Francisco. They got like $20 million seed money, or a round of funding, not seed money, but a round of funding recently, and they're going to build this thing they're calling Galaxy, again with the space metaphors. They're building Galaxy, which is going to be basically like, if you can envision hosting for Meteor, so optimized hosting for Meteor projects and stuff like that. So what I've been doing is I'm building out this project for the client, but I also have been studying up on using it as a back end. Kind of similar to Chromium and those types of things, but from a more of a generalized JavaScript standpoint.
Okay.
So anyway, yeah, it's got some OAuth stuff built into it. You can hook into Facebook, you can hook into Google Plus, you can hook into, so it's kind of to me that kind of stuff is very interesting. I do a lot of web development and stuff, so it's kind of a interesting piece. And they just released support for React, which is Facebook's. Facebook is trying to build native applications, but they don't want to have to build, just like everybody else. They don't want to have to build the Android version and the iOS version using completely different languages. They want to have one stack that they can use, in-house to build their stuff, and React is their solution for that. So,
what language do you use?
Again, JavaScript.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's JavaScript everywhere. It's kind of become those. As a web developer, it was one of those things early on where you avoided JavaScript really because, there were issues across platform, and sometimes it worked in the browser, sometimes it didn't. Internet Explorer, had its own version, and all this kind of nuances. But over the years, it's just become more and more pervasive, and now, like I said, the push is to use it on the server and on the client, and just kind of use it everywhere. Yeah, so it's interesting. Anyway, we don't want to talk about all that. Rob said, yeah, right. Rob says one platform to bring them together and into the darkness behind them. Yeah, it's true. It's true. Everybody's chasing the same dream. Everybody's chasing the same unified one language, one everything, right?
That's why we have Corona.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, and there's and Corona is about building to the native app, and being able to access and do things natively. But I think that's the one downfall, or at least at the moment, we call it the Achilles heel of using web technologies to create native apps. There's still a lot of fiddling involved. Even when you go to create one of these projects and use JavaScript, there's still a lot of tweaking, a little too much tweaking for most people. So some people what do you say, like they're proud of their coding muscles, right? They like having the environment set up where they have all these tools and they can do all this command line stuff, and it's all these cryptic little settings and stuff like that, and it's like, whew, that's just way too much. You just want to get in and build it and make it work.
Yeah, I think Corona strikes a nice balance on that front, because it's not a WYSIWYG. It's not painting by numbers. I think there's room to if you're a surrogate and you want to build a bunch of plugins that tie into native libraries, you can. But so I think there's like I said, just a nice balance between accessibility and extensibility and custom, the ability to customize and really build something. You feel like you're building something.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, and without having to actually go out and saw the lumber, right? Cut the planks of wood yourself.
I think I'm in the same boat as a lot of people, where it opened the doors to a guy like me doing it. A guy who's no computer science degree, totally self-taught, at various phases of learning and then falling off the wagon, and not necessarily having tons of time to devote to it. So 2007, 2008, they start having the App Store. That sounds really interesting, but I got a job and busy, and I don't know if I have time to take the full plunge. And then I open the New York Times and I see Bubble Ball. I'd be curious to see how many Bubble Ball converts there were, because that was it. That was how I get the New York Times email every day, and it got featured in that little article, and I said, well, that sounds cool. Let me go see what that's all about.
Oh, that is cool. I didn't know this your backstory.
Yeah. No, I mean, because I maybe when I was 16 or 17, there was a time when it could have turned that way for me, but it didn't. And then I went to school for theater, and I'm working and doing all the rest of it, and have geeky interests, but not really building anything. Not really, I do the occasional website for a friend or a theater company somewhere, little things like that. But wasn't really. I mean, I was doing Macromedia Director when it was still Macromedia Director.
That's funny.
And HyperCard. I loved HyperCard.
Well, I find it interesting, just like you just pointed out, that a lot of people who are what I'm going to call creatives find themselves in programming positions. Whether they had a degree in literature or a degree in art or whatever, they naturally sort of gravitate to programming, and I think that's because programming is a very much a creative process.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, it's problem solving. At the end of the day, it's what you want. It's not going to build itself. And you get started, and that presents new problems. And I just think it's about working your way around that.
Yeah, I tell you what drives me insane is I've worked in a variety of different environments, and there's really kind of I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 classes of programmers, right? There's the people who are really interested in the tech side of things. There are people who are like yourself, who are creatives, who have found themselves, found their way to programming and do exceptionally well at it. And then there are the people who, went to the job fair or the career counselor office, right, and heard that programming or IT paid a lot of money. And they're there, but they're not fully engaged. Their heart's not really in it. You know what I'm saying? And those are the hardest people to work with, because you're kind of like, you're passionate about it and they are not, and it's so it's always great to kind of come across somebody who is passionate about it, and then be able to work with them.
Yeah.
What's really sad with this, if I could tell a story from my past, when I graduated college, and I ended up with a BBA in Finance and Computer Information Systems, one of my fellow students, and this was back in the mid-'80s, got a $25,000 a year job with AT&T. She had never touched a terminal in her life. She'd only done punch cards. She had really good grades, but she couldn't program her way out of a wet paper bag. Now, me, very passionate about this, I ended up with a $14,000 a year job out of college. But I was dropped into a community college. I was the only person in the computer lab other than my boss who knew nothing about it. I had a job computerized the campus. I had my own VAX 11 780 mini computer as a personal computer for several months while I was getting stuff set up. And within a year, I had the campus computerized, student labs set up, all the administrative folks online doing their grades online. And it was the most phenomenal job I could have had coming out of college. The pay sucked, but because I could program, I was given an awful lot of responsibility. I never knew what happened with my friend other than, she got an awful lot of money coming out of college with not being able to program a lick. But
well, fortunately, she had that punch card ability, which took her well into the 2000s.
Well, I think she had the grade point average. That was the big difference. But, yeah, I mean, you see it when you're in school, the people who have a passion for what they're doing and the people who are there to earn an income.
Right.
And it's a world of difference between the two.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I went when I went through school. They were still teaching COBOL and mainframe systems and all this other stuff because I went to a smaller school, and they really hadn't. And to be fair, the internet was blowing up outside of the college environment, right? It hadn't hit the college scene yet, and anyway, so I would take these classes and learn data structures and all these other things. And then after I finished my assignments, I would teach myself how to do HTML and ASP and how to work with databases and things like that. I wasn't interested in trying to compete with all the mainframe programmers. I was like, there's a whole workforce full of those guys who have a whole year's worth of experience on me. I'm not about to try to go in and take their job. I'd rather do something new and have my own, have my own time to grow and be something different.
Yeah.
Which is funny because now I find myself writing payroll reports and doing the same things that they did, but just different technologies.
No, for me it was really interesting. I was 16. My brother was a student and got a job working at a local Penn State campus. So I was living outside of Philadelphia, and Penn State has their main campus, and they have a number of satellite campuses, and there was one nearby that my brother was going to. And I don't know how he did it or why, to tell you the truth, but he got me a job. He knew I was looking for a summer job, and I guess he thought, well, he doesn't want to flip burgers. So he said, well, I'll get you a job working with, at the time, was essentially an AV department, when they still sort of had AV departments. And computers were not a given in every single classroom yet. The internet was sort of it was starting to become a thing, but it was. I don't know if this is dating me a little bit, but the fun of browsing all the FTP mirrors that were on all the college sites at the time, and it was just a way to discover software and games and all sorts of stuff. So they hired me. My brother told him, I don't know if he told them that I could do it, to program. Or not program's the wrong word, but to create like a multimedia CD-ROM for this partnership that they were doing with some local arboretum that was going to run in a kiosk. It was going to be it was before an iMac. iMacs were a thing, so it wasn't that, but it was going to be, a monitor with a Mac underneath it. And I said, well, here's Macromedia Director, kid. Your school ends in June. Figure it out. And I got paid to work, like almost full-time days in the summer, sitting there, and I had to help if a teacher needed, a professor needed help setting up a projector or whatever, I also did that. But I got a computer, and I got to sit there, and I got to learn Macromedia Director. At the end of it, we put out this thing that was running on a kiosk for a little while, on this thing, and to me it felt like the coolest thing in the world. And it beats the hell out of flipping burgers, that's for sure.
Don't you feel like you're somebody's gonna figure it out? Somebody's gonna like surely they know that. I mean, they're paying me for this. Are you
I
kidding
still
me?
feel like that. Are you kidding? I started a new job this week. I'm like, oh man, they're gonna run me out of here on a rails.
I still feel like that.
But but hey, I guess that's fake it till you make it, right?
I just think that technology moves so quickly that all you can do is draw from your past experiences, to have the confidence to move forward. But at some point, you feel more comfortable than you used to. But yeah, everything moves so quickly that you just there's always that feeling of like, man, I hope they don't figure out. I really don't know what's going on.
Plus, if you're 16 and you're almost tall enough and you're on a college campus surrounded by college girls who don't know that you're 16 and didn't go to your high school, you kind of feel like you can pass for that, That's a good job. That's a pretty good job.
That's hilarious. That's hilarious. Hey, Rob, you got your Apple TV in this week, right? Last week.
Yes, I did.
And you've done what with it? You tell us the Apple TV story.
Well, in fact, I'm posting in the forums right now about it. Well, first thing, when you get it, it's a brick. You have to download the Apple TV tvOS and install it on the device, so it just doesn't power right up for you.
It came with no firmware
OS
installed on it at all? Wow.
So you had to download it. You had to go into iTunes and option click to install the IPSW file and stuff like that. The initial tests that I conducted were not good. If you try to install a Corona-built app, it comes back and Xcode says you can't install that. It's only for phones, tablets, and iPods. So, Apple didn't clearly say you could just put iOS apps on it. What they've done is majority of the iOS frameworks, like Core Audio and Core Video and things like that, do work over there. So I got the bright idea, well, let me go get Corona cards. That way I could create something. Well, back up a second. The reason the Corona-built apps won't run is they're built against the iOS SDK, not the tvOS SDK. So I got the bright idea to go mess with Corona cards and see what I could do with that. So I built a new Xcode project with tvOS. I installed the Corona cards framework and all of its required frameworks for it to be able to compile and run. And the first set of errors I hit was Core Motion wasn't there. So Core Motion is a required framework for Corona. It is not a framework available for tvOS. So that's was kind of my second block, and after that I sort of stopped that. I told engineering what I had found, and then I went on and started messing with the TV markup language on the JavaScript side to see what was involved in building apps going in that direction. I think for anybody that knows enough Swift and is comfortable enough in Xcode, it'll be pretty easy to build apps for it, because I mean it's not that un-iOS-like. You just didn't have to get used to the things that they've left out. And of course, it doesn't make any sense to have a motion framework on a TV. I mean, you can't exactly shake it to get accelerometer information. That's all going to be coming from the remote, which is a different framework to deal with the remote.
You haven't watched me watch House of Cards.
No, I haven't. Engineering got theirs today, and I had a talk with Walter tonight, and there are going to be a lot of changes have to be made to make this work. Michael, I don't know if you want to chime in on any information you gleaned locally in the office today, but basically this is going to be another platform, just like OS X Desktop or Android, and it's going to take a lot of engineering resources to bring it to bear. So it's not something we're going to be getting in the next few weeks for certain, because we got to get
it's not a proven platform at this point either.
right. And the community has really hit us hard over the years, saying they wanted OS X desktop and they wanted Windows desktop, and that's where we've got our engineering resources committed at the moment. And once we get those platforms to a stable, functional, robust enough to survive on their own, then we can turn our attention elsewhere. But for right now, we've got to get those two platforms going.
Yeah, I have nothing to add. Well said.
Yeah, definitely well said, for sure. Yeah, I don't think that Apple really kind of, well, maybe they alluded to it, right? That you would be able to put your iOS apps, on Apple TV. But I think from everything that I've seen, it's pretty much, if you already develop iOS apps, you won't have any problem developing apps for Apple TV.
You work with SpriteKit? It's got SpriteKit.
Yeah. So if you're gonna recognize, 90% of the syntax for Apple TV. We've added this other stuff. It's TV specific. It's just you'll have to learn as well. But yeah, I don't even think that if you just took your non-Corona, straight out of the box sort of existing iOS Xcode project and then try to just push it to Apple TV, I think you'd still have to port that into an Apple TV project and then publish it from there, because like you were saying, it's a whole different project. It's a whole different platform.
And it's a different mentality too. It's not a phone. It's not a touch device. It's something that's 10 feet away from you, and the navigation is different. You have to focus things, and that's how you visually clue somebody in that you're connected to a part of the app. And a lot of the apps that our Corona developers produce are not going to be suitable apps for the TV. You're competing with the big boys now. We're going to be seeing the AAA studios producing stuff for this, and will my little space shooter compete with that market? No. It's a vertical app. It's not going to fit the platform. While I can get controller support in it, I might be able to get it to work with the remote. But is somebody going to really sit there and play a Space Invaders type game in the wrong format for a while? Now, I've got a trivia game that might port really well to the TV. But you have to think about what your app is, how it's going to play. What is your realistic chance that people are actually going to download this? They're not going to fill that screen up with hundreds and hundreds of apps. They're going to probably keep it down in the 10 to 20 range so that you can navigate through and find stuff quickly. So you've got to be really good to earn your way up onto that top shelf.
Discoverability is going to be really hard on there. Because a phone, you're stuck in line somewhere, you can fiddle through and scroll through and see this. When you're on the TV, you've got dozens of distractions, and it's, if you're not near the top of that list, it's going to be really hard to get found.
I see this as being another channel, another outlet for existing content, right? So, case in point, I've talked about this before, but my wife's website, she does food, and she has a YouTube channel that has almost 8,000 subscribers, which is great. But when you go to watch her on the TV, her channel is buried in the YouTube app. So you have to, you really have to work for it to go and see her content, right? And first of all, you have to use the YouTube app, which a lot of people do, but it's not the perfect interface for content consumption, especially if you have subscribed to a bunch of channels. So it would be great if we could give her the opportunity to bring her up to the top, like you were saying. Be that 10 or 20 tiles or whatever that are on the screen, and so I think that's where it really comes into the value. If you already have an existing piece of intellectual property or content or whatever, and you can say, hey, through those channels where people discover you already, you can say, hey, we're also available on Apple TV. Be sure to look for us there, so you can watch this program on your television. and
Yeah.
and then have them add you, then have them like voice search or whatever, and then put you in their mix in their lineup.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Apple TV is going to definitely be geared more toward video sources and the games that will fit the platform. Um, Ed has asked a question of what about the idea of an app running on the TV device, but then interfacing with its TCP, UDP over Wi-Fi, basically turning the phone into a remote control controller.
I think that's
Uh,
an awesome potential idea, particularly for
well,
someone like you, like a quiz app. If you give everybody a buzzer in their phone or whatever, I think it could be real cool.
that's what I was planning on doing with my trivia game when I poured it. Is being able to enable iPhones and Android devices in the room to be additional controllers. You
I'm
know,
kind of surprised they didn't do that like from the get-go. Like being able to use your iPhone to manipulate the TV.
and at some point, Apple might actually do that themselves. I mean, this is kind of a new platform for them, and I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't do that eventually.
That would
Only,
be it would be interesting. Okay, I'm sorry. Uh, it would be interesting if you had your quiz app, and then everybody in the room has their phone, and then the app randomly selects someone to answer, almost like a hot potato. And then if you can't answer the question correctly, you're out of the game, or you lose a point, or whatever. You know what I
I
mean?
could,
Like,
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, I could see even, I mean, all sorts of weird. Like, I think this could be an opportunity for. I was talking about Space Team last week. Make Space Team something that we all play around the screen. Have something going on the screen that interacts. It's an option. It's an opportunity to up the ante on something like that.
well, and that was in the documentation, at least the guide for the interface guide that Apple put out was kind of like Rob was saying. One, the device is 10 feet from you, so take that into consideration. And then two is that the television, they call it a communal device. It's not a one-to-one sort of thing. You're usually sitting in the room with one or more people around you, and so you kind of have to consider the interaction of them as well.
Hasbro's got to make a version of Battleship where I've got my iPad and you've got your iPad and we've got the screen between us doing something. That'd be awesome. Take electronic talking Battleship to school.
Well, the other thing that Walter suggested, and I'm going to be putting all this in the post I'm writing up, is that really, if at this time, the best thing you can do is, if you're interested in the TV platform, is build a great OS X app. It's already kind of a landscape, bigger screen platform where you can get in and kind of get that, a good solid game there. And while you're building it, think about the controls that you will eventually get on the TV platform, and build in controller support so that you're ready for that interface when it comes in. And then once you have something that's been proven as something worthy of porting to the TV, then we can worry about porting it at that point. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, if you're that interested in the platform, because like Jason said just a moment ago, it's not exactly proven. I mean, Apple reports that they've had good success with having the devices in homes. Everybody says that they're excited about it, but we need a little bit of history to know how this is going to work from an app perspective, right? We all know that everybody kind of wants to hook a device to their TV and be able to watch Netflix and YouTube and all these other stuff, but the app end of this hasn't been proven out yet. It'll probably take off and be gangbusters, but it could also fall on its face. Who knows? So at this point, if you want to get in ground floor and test it out, then go that route, and then once it has more traction and stuff like that, then it would definitely be more makes more sense for Corona to put in the support for it, or put in the time to do the support for it.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see whether the 200 meg cap and the streaming of assets becomes a limiting factor that sort of restricts its growth. Or, hey, it might become something that pushes people and leads to interesting innovation. Or it might be something that 6 months down the road, Apple says, this isn't working. Hey, now we sell a 64 gigabyte version. Why don't you trade up?
But it has it has space on it. It has memory on it, right? I mean, I don't remember what they said. Didn't they say there was going to be a 32 or a 64 gig version? Didn't they say there was going to be like a 32 or a 64 gig version? It's just that the apps themselves have a 200 megabyte restriction on them.
And no local storage.
Yeah. So basically, as I understand it, the system will try to do resource management for you automatically. So as it needs more space, it'll try to roll out different resources and stuff. Things that haven't been used before.
I was listening to one podcast, I think, and it was all hypothetical, but they were talking about sort of the possible frustrations and limiting factors of this as they go, it's going to become a situation where it could, if they're streaming in resources and the resources are being killed as they're not being used, it might result in annoying sort of loading, buffering type screens if you're jumping around a little bit. I think the example they gave was, this is not just my phone. I'm not the only one playing. My kid might walk in the room. My kid wants to play level 1. Okay, well, we stop doing what I'm doing. It jumps to level 1. Oops, it's got to stream in all this new thing, so it's loading. And then he gets bored a minute later, and then I want to go back to the level that I was playing. And, no, it dumped all that to again, all hypothetical. It might be a total non-issue. It's a baffling It's a high threshold, 200 megs, particularly when they're supposedly courting AAA developers and all of that. So I don't know. I'll be curious to see.
I'm sure it'll change over time, but yeah, you're right. I mean, it should help to drive certain innovations. Like I can imagine that Apple, just like any other company these days, big companies these days, wants people to use the cloud services, right? They want to expand out and make cloud more of an important part of the user experience, and they want developers to develop more cloud-centric solutions. And so this definitely would be one of the ways to push that, because the concept of downloading a stub that gets things up and running and then downloading additional resources has been around for a long time, but it takes another level of effort usually for people to implement, and so people just don't go that route. The whole thing of something working online and then having it work offline, it's possible to do, but it takes more development time and more thought, and this could be one of those things that pushes developers to do more of that. And if they get comfortable there, then maybe they'll, I know how to do it there. Maybe I'll do it in my other apps. He's writing a whole bunch of stuff over here.
I saw something on Twitter where somebody was talking about Apple TV and gaming on the TV, and I thought it was not, because despite the fact that I don't really see myself necessarily releasing anything, certainly no time soon, on that platform, I'm sort of excited about the possibilities it holds, but I didn't think of it this way, and this is sort of a pessimistic view, but I don't know that it's entirely off base. They said, this whole thing with Apple and gaming on the TV feels a little bit like they're chasing what other people are doing. And that has never gone particularly well for them. When they come up with a thing that nobody's doing, that's when they tend to knock it out of the park. And I thought it's an interesting take on it. And like I said, not entirely untrue.
Yes, I agree in all those points. One of the interesting things that they're doing is they've kind of split the development up into two pieces. At least that's the way I see it. They have this TVML, which is their TV markup language, and then they have sort of the pure native OS TV apps. And the TVML piece is really works well for web developers because it's a client-server model. So you have the app that runs on Apple TV is the client, and then it makes a call out to remote resources that live on the developer's server someplace, and then those resources live on the server. So your movie, your cover album, images, all your top shelf images, all the other icons and all that other stuff. And I think what that's going to allow developers to do is create, like we said, some of this top shelf listings where we can pull things out of YouTube. We can pull things. I don't know if Netflix will do this, but where things can kind of be more top shelf, to use Apple's lingo. And that seems like it would add a lot of value, at least for the content producers, to be able to bring things to the top, and for the consumer not to have to dig for those things. So that seems like there's a value piece there. The rest of it, yeah, I don't know. I mean, everybody's trying to crack the nut on being able to communicate with people through their television, right? And the one thing that I think is that people don't talk about is what Apple's calling handoff, or sort of this unification of things. Like you just talked about it just a while ago, being able to have the television interact with your device in your hand, right? So when you go and experience a piece of content or interact with something, you can sort of seamlessly move it from the tablet to the TV, or from the TV to the phone, or from the phone to whatever. That seems like that's the real value piece, and I don't see that as strong in other solutions.
Yeah, I mean, it's arguably what Nintendo's trying to do, right, with their most recent console, and I don't know that that's been
see that
for them.
But in that space, though, I mean, Nintendo doesn't have a phone, right? Nintendo doesn't have a tablet, right? Is that what we're saying? I mean, as I'm talking about
their new console comes with, I guess, or the controller has a touch panel,
right?
7-inch tablet, essentially. I've never used one, so yeah. I say this from a place of ignorance, but I think it's something that has exciting potential that could go unrealized, or is niche enough that can you build a whole platform around it? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's all going to come down. I mean, if we think about iPhone, there was a time when Apple took a lot of heat because they didn't have a way to develop apps, right? You just had the apps that Apple put on the phone, and there was the whole thing to have an app store and have a way to be able to build apps, and you could argue that if they hadn't been able to bridge that gap, maybe iPhone just would have been a kind of a cool gadget. The
Newton.
Yeah, it was like the Newton, and just sort of, well, it's got a big screen and I can touch it, but yeah, it wasn't guaranteed success either. So I guess that's what I'm saying.
I will say, this is going back to 16-year-old me. I remember looking at the Newton, and I actually got to play with one when it was new through that same job I was talking about earlier at the university. And I remember thinking at the time how cool it would be to develop games for it, which of course was a total losing proposition. But if I could go back in time and show 16-year-old me and be like, "Hey, hang in there, because they're gonna make this thing, and you're gonna get to make software for it," it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Let me get to one of Ed's questions in there. He was asking about the term top shelf. And I think we may have been kind of mislabeling it a little bit. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so this is the human interface guidelines. And I think what we've been talking about, the top shelf, is this top row of applications. This is what's going to come up first for the readers, and you got to be able, or the viewers, and you've got to get your app into this or this row really to have any success of them actually using your apps. Everything else is going to kind of get built below it. But in Apple's terms, what top shelf actually is this area here above the app menu bar down here at the bottom. And this is an area where you can play content for your app before they kind of click on it. So like here you can see they've got the App Store developer icon kind of bigger here, and so that's what's showing this up here at the top. So if I switched over to Photos, this top area would show up and start showing photos. And then once you finally click into the app, then you'll get the full screen for your app to work with. And so you're going to have to provide these top shelf images and stuff as part of the showcase as part of your app. But still, I think in context what we were talking about is not only do they have to find you on the store, you're going to have to end up in these top 2 or 3 rows to actually get anybody to use your app.
Well, there's two concepts that you made me think of, Rob. One is in Google, the top 1, 2, 3 listings, right, is what people shoot for in terms of search engine optimization and stuff like that. Really number one. So if your website shows up on the second page of the Google search results, you're essentially not being seen, sort of thing.
Yeah, you're done.
Yeah. So right there, you've got what, 10 icons, 3 of them. 5 of them being sort of the really premium real estate, and then 5 of them sort of peeking over the edge, if you will. And then the other thing that you maybe think of that makes me smile is that when developers talk about making their app, they always kind of gripe about the administrative part of it, having to get it listed in the store and having to create app icons and then having to create the artwork for the app listing and all that kind of stuff like that. And if you look at the requirements for Apple TV, yeah, you've got the icon, you've got cover images, you've got top shelf banners, you've got, it explodes in terms of the number of assets that you need to create for this. It's not to be taken lightly.
For purely on the TV side, it's actually not that bad. When you try to build it in with your existing code base, then it kind of becomes annoying. But the sizes, you're going to provide a 400 by 240 and a 1280 by 768. Those are the same aspect ratio. Here where they got these different zones and stuff is basically, anything outside of 370 by 222 is not going to be considered safe. That might get cut off on certain things or whatever. But to make it work, you've got to do these layered things so that you can get this ability to have this little parallax animation going on. Well, that's a whole new file format you have to deal with.
Right.
And how you make those is not, they've got a Photoshop plugin, and then you can do it through Xcode as well, but it's things that you've got to do. And then when you get down to the top shelf images, they're 1920 by 720. So it's basically the top half of the screen on a 1080p device is what that's going to be taking up.
Yeah, so right there on the left-hand side, you got your app icon, your top shelf images, your game center images, layered images, launch images.
Well, and then the inevitable 4K version 2 that'll introduce a whole new set of pixel counts to deal with.
Yeah. So so it's going to be interesting. I don't, as you say, I think that it's going to be a limited amount of space in terms of what people will actually use. Maybe people will put 10 rows of apps on their TV. I don't know, but when it comes down to it, what are they actually going to watch, or what are they actually going to interact with? I don't know.
I'm just realizing too that discoverability is going to be extra hard on here because it's it's arguably already very hard on the App Store. If you're not featured, if you're not in the top whatever of your category, you're going to have a hard time getting found. But there are alternate channels, right? You can get a blogger to write up about you and put a direct link to you. And on the TV, on the phone, I can be browsing a website and say, that looks cool, click a link, now I'm there. I don't know if they're going to build a way to push from another device to your TV. That might be a cool thing, but without that, the App Store is literally the only way for people to discover you, which really ups the ante. For because even if let's say I hear about this game that's not being featured and I want to play it, and all I have is a URL. Oh God, now you gotta type that thing in using.
And Rob, have you done any research on this? Because I'm curious as to how much the voice search will play into this, though.
I really don't know.
Because it works. It seems to work pretty well for movies. I've played with show me the James Bond movies, show me the ones with Sean Connery, kind of like they did with the examples in the keynote. But
I'm not taking Siri into account, so that might answer my question there.
Yeah.
Siri is going to be a better input method than trying to punch in letters off the remote control. Yeah. I can tell you that.
But you've got a great point there, Jason. Is that if I search on something in the App Store on my device, I'm typing it out with my thumbs, or if I click on a link from Google and go automatically to the App Store, that's a whole different interaction than trying to type it out on my TV.
And if you discover this great game on a website, let's say when you're out and about on the bus, Siri is great if you remember the name of it. But if you've got to wait until you're back at your TV, you might forget the name of that app. It takes some of the instant gratification away from it potentially.
Yeah. Well, to be fair though, I mean, there's going to be a whole new app store, right? Or at least a TV app store. I don't know how it's going to be rolled in UI wise, but they've said there's going to be a TV app store that's going to be geared towards TV apps. So what they have planned there, who knows? I mean, they haven't revealed anything on that.
It's true. I'm being pessimistic.
Well, no, it's definitely questions that we should all be considering, right? Because we're like, well, how do we? It's just like Rob has pointed out on the desktop. People will say, well, how do I put ads on my desktop app? And you're like, well, desktop apps don't typically have banner ads and and interstitial videos. So is that really the same one correlation?
Nobody's going to accidentally tap that ad you end up flashing in the middle of the screen.
Yeah. So so it's just a different interaction. We definitely have to rethink these types of things for sure. I'm thinking, I'm looking at my device here, and I'm wondering if there would be like like you could look it up on your device, or you could read an article on a computer and then click on a link and then go to an app store. If there would be, because today you can click on a link, go to iTunes, and then they give you the get button or the purchase button depending on what it is, and then when you do that, it'll just show up on your device, even though you did it in iTunes on your computer. So maybe the same type of thing where you're like, hey, I want to buy that, I want to have that, or whatever, and boop, it just shows up on your Apple TV.
Yeah, there's definitely ways of doing that, I think, and if they can make it that way so that I hope they don't go the route that they do right now for if you've got an iPad-only app, for example, and you don't have your iPad handy and you see it on the iPhone, you can't view its store listing on the iPhone, right? It's going to say, hey, that's an iPad-only app. Look at it on your iPad, or here's a link to the developer's website. But you wouldn't have the option of, say, purchasing that and having it pushed to your iPad.
Yeah. Steven said he got caught in the rain. Sounds like a free shower to me, man. Well, yeah, I'm interested to see what they come up with. I think, the ultimate goal is to be able to get in front of people no matter where they are. We've got the phone, we've got the computer, tablet, TV, the car, whether they ever actually come out with a car or not. That's a place where people are, and for people, people who commute to work, that's where they spend a lot of their life. So the cracking the car nut would be a
Are we talking beyond CarPlay? Are you talking about like an actual Apple branded car? Is this?
Well, I'm just talking about. I'm not even talking about Apple specifically. I'm just talking about everybody wants to kind of create that unified experience where they can get in front of you, they get their brand, right? Be that conduit, that communication channel where they can get in front of you no matter where you are. And a lot of people spend quite a bit of time in their vehicles. So, being able to move seamlessly from place to place would be a great thing from a user standpoint and from just a productivity standpoint and things like that. I mean,
Google's trying to make cars that drive themselves, giving you 2 hands to use your device.
I tell you what, I mean,
Sign me up.
I'm about this far from never owning a car again. I am just my car sits out in the driveway and never goes anywhere. And
Are you a cyclist now, or what do you do?
well, I work from home, so I just don't ever drive my vehicle, and so my son is going to take it when he gets his driver's license. We have a family vehicle that we use, and I just honestly don't see the need to have to go out and buy another car, right? So that I can have a vehicle can sit out in the driveway and be accessible to me when I need it, not when I can push a button and have Uber come pick me up.
Oh, see, now I love to drive, and maybe it's because I
Really?
live in the city and it's not, and I don't have to.
Yeah.
And so it's I mean, you don't need to have a car, but I have a car. I'm very fortunate to have one, and man, I love getting in the car and driving. I love it.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. See, Michael says sign me up. I tell you what, I would love for self-driving cars. I would love to just. I
don't even like an automatic transmission.
I just want to push a button. I want to push a button. I want to have a thing drive up, and I just want to get in it, and then I just want to go, and then I want to get out and be wherever I am, right? And then in the meantime, I want to be on my laptop or talking on my phone or do whatever. I really don't. To me, I spent a lot of time doing 2-hour commutes both ways, and I can't stand really driving in the car anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the minimum 2 hours of my life I can get back every day. Sign me up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, even if you could just sit in the vehicle and do something else, right? Work on your laptop or whatever. I mean, yeah, sleep. Get those hours of sleep back that you lost.
Yeah, until you get in a crash, then good luck sleeping in your car ever again.
Yeah, right. But no, I look forward to it, and that's a disrupt. Think about that for just a moment. All the people who wouldn't necessarily need to buy cars, right? The reduction of cars, and then you just have on-demand cars. It'd be crazy. Except for Jason, you'd have Jason. Jason's that you're like the.
I say that though, but I don't really. I have the car and it sits unused. It's like I drive it because I have to move it. I street park it, so I have to move it for the street sweeping schedule. That's how it gets driven more often than not. But
you'd be the free radical in the system, right? All the self-driving cars would all be automated, and everything would be fine, and all the flow of traffic would be metered, and there'd be no pollution anymore. And then there'd be Jason like just bumping around like bumper cars and. The one guy that won't give up his car keys.
I want to try a self-driving car, though. I mean, the geek in me definitely wants to try it.
Yeah. I think it would be great. But yeah, I think that's the utopia. People are just trying to get, especially because it's all about media consumption, and all the brands want to be able to get in front of you wherever you are, and all that kind of stuff. And I don't know. It seems like it would be great to be able to move from thing to thing and not really be able to think about it too much.
I don't know, man. I saw Logan's Run. I know how this ends.
No, right, yeah. Or what's the other one with Tom Cruise, the Minority Report? Yeah, I know how all this ends up. I tell you the one thing, though, that is Apple TV, the one thing I'm trying to keep in mind is that they've labeled it Apple TV because that's what we're accustomed to, right? We use the term radio for Spotify, but it's not radio, right? It's not traditional radio. So TV is what we're comfortable with. I think that what we're really talking about is a user interface, a user experience that is different than what you have on a personal device like a phone or a tablet or a computer, a desktop computer. And that right now is TV, living room TV, but over time that will change into refrigerator or wall display, right? It'll be something like that we won't necessarily. It won't be a TV, but it'll be a touchless display or something like that. And who knows? Maybe those wall displays will turn into touch displays, right? We'll have just big like a 50-inch display that you'll come up and just kiosk style, boop, 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 and it'll make that noise when we poke it, boop, boop.
Do you think that'll get democratized though? Do you think? I mean, I suppose the answer is here, right? I mean, it's the phones have gotten mass market, even though they're amazingly sophisticated. It's probably depressing to think about how that has become affordable for the masses. Do you think these sorts of like World's Fair style future concepts, do you think that they'll trickle down to the average person?
Yeah, I don't see why not. That stuff always has, right? It always has. I mean, look at any technology that started out and then it just sort of becomes available to everybody. I mean, that's the reason. It's the reason we're able to do this online. It's the reason we're able to. I mean, even cars. I think we'll get to the point like right now. Even with cars, like we were talking about Uber. Maybe I see a lot of people using public transportation because they either can't afford a car or whatever, right? And now, if a car can just show up, especially if it's a driverless car, the prices even go down. Car just shows up. You don't need to own the car anymore, right? So you get the benefits of the thing, but not even have to own it. So I think so. I think it will. It'll be definitely different than what we envision it as, but I think it'll get to that point. Anyway.
What's Uber like down there in Austin? Up in New York, it's different. It's because the taxi and limousine commissions already have such a stranglehold over how things are done. When Uber came here, they're like, no. I mean, Uber had to set themselves up essentially like a taxi dispatch company. So it's always a black car. I mean, it looks like a town car here. It's not like your buddy wants to make a few extra bucks and.
Well, the two times I've used it, I used it once in Dallas to share a ride with somebody, and I used it just recently here in Austin to go to an event on my own. And both times, it was the driver's personal car. And one, the guy looked like he had just bought the car. It was, had the new car smell. And one was a very clean car, but was obviously not a brand new car. And both experiences were great. I mean, you get in, the guy says, or guy or gal, one of each in both situations, said, where are we going? Which just basically just confirming where we're supposed to be going, and then you confirm the location, and they punch the thing, and then they're mapping, they're Google mapping it or whatever, Uber mapping it to the next destination, right? So it's telling them where to go, and then they just drive it. It's great. And then I love Uber because it's all already tied to my credit card, so I don't have to fiddle with anything. I'm not paying the driver. I don't have to, what I'm saying? It's all done. I mean, it's literally get in the vehicle. Hey, how's it going? I'm going here. And then when you arrive at your destination, you get out. I mean, you just get out and thanks for the ride, and shut the door. I mean, if you're rude, you don't have to say anything to them, but I mean, it's all done. There's no tip. There's no, it's all kind of done.
Yeah.
I tell you, the one thing that I saw was here recently that in Dallas they had a kind of a what do you call that? Strike. Uber drivers were going on strike because they were upset about being forced to take lower paying fares. Because apparently I haven't taken some of the black car rides, but apparently on some of those they can request, I guess, lower prices. You're right, and then as these Uber drivers are responding to these requests, obviously they don't want to take lower. They don't make less money, right? So Uber is trying to say, well, you have to take, if somebody's asking for a ride, you have to take them. And the drivers are kind of upset because they're like, look, you're driving down our revenue as a driver, and so they had some strikes here or in Dallas over the past weekend or so, which I thought was interesting.
Did that make problems for the commuters there? Is it a big enough market share of the driver ecosystem there that if Uber taxi drivers go on strike, if taxi drivers go on strike in New York City, it's a big deal.
Right. Yeah, I don't know, and I don't know how many of them. If it was all of the drivers or if it was just a few of the drivers. So I really don't know. It's hard. The other thing is it's really hard to tell. Like if you take the traditional yellow cab and you see a bunch of those in your neighborhood, you're like, wow, there's a lot of cab activity in my neighborhood. But with Uber, it's just like somebody's car, right? So you're like, there's just a bunch of cars in my neighborhood. You don't know if there's Uber cars or if they're just your neighbors or what. So there's no real way to kind of visually look out there and say, oh wow, there's a whole lot of Uber going on. I did see a creative thing though in one of the local coffee shops. Somebody apparently, I don't have the card with me right now, but apparently when you sign up for Uber or Lyft, one of the things that you can do is you get a code where you can get credits on your Uber tab for when people sign up for Uber and use it. So I've seen that people are actually going out and printing their own cards and then putting them in public places so that people will use Uber and Lyft. I've seen it for Lyft as well, and basically spread the word and get some credits for their own tab. I was like, kind of like an affiliate program or a referral program, but
creating a whole micro economy.
But with rides, yeah, for rides. I thought that was cool. I could get behind that. Totally get behind that. Then then you'd have this whole balance of Uber credits, and you just never have to even. You'd be like, I went from here to San Francisco in Uber, and I didn't even have to pay for it. I don't know. It's good. I think it's good though for especially events for downtown. If I go to downtown Austin and I park, I've either got to pay a meter, find a parking spot that's available in my time slot, or park in a parking garage. And you know what I'm talking about. And it can be expensive. So there's expensive. Yeah, and so there's times when I'm like, maybe I'll just go to this event with an Uber car, because I'd have to pay, $10, $15, $20, whatever in parking anyway, and I can get down there and just get dropped off right at the door and come home and not have to hassle with any of it. So.
They should be paying you. That's a mighty good endorsement right there.
Yeah. I get excited about those things. I love that kind of stuff. I'll tell you, my laptop, my cell phone, and coffee shop. That's all I really need. That's all I really need. And so having a vehicle, just having it take you somewhere and drop you off. I don't know. It feeds the self-sufficiency sort of thing in a weird sort of way, right? I don't know. Anyway, so hey, I wanted to ask you, Jason.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of plugins have been put out lately. Sergey's going to town. Ed's getting in the mix. You've put out several. So
Not just the one, but I've got a
just
few others. I've got a few others cooking up, but
oh well, maybe I'm thinking
I've
maybe
just been super busy lately, and they're like working. This is my problem. It's like I get it working, but it's not. It's the last. It's that last mile.
yeah.
Always drives me crazy. It's the same way with the Screenshot Saturday app, which is going to happen soon, but it's just like it's the.
I'm gonna start a Kickstarter campaign just to get the Screenshot Saturday thing going. Raise $25. and then the what do you call that? The next tiers. What are those? What do you call those?
Rewards, the backer rewards or whatever.
Well, yeah, you got the backer rewards, but you got the extended goals.
The stretch goals.
The stretch goals. Yeah, the stretch goals are going to be yeah. I think we should totally do that. Anyway, I'm curious about you to get your feedback on the process of creating plugins because today is Tuesday, and Tuesday tutorials go out, and Rob published a great tutorial on plugins. And
yes, he did. I saw it.
Yeah, and for those who hadn't seen it, it's a compilation of things like information on how to create plugins and some of the plugins that are created by Corona, but also plugins that have been created by the community. So, what do you think about the process? I mean, not a technical blow by blow of how to build a plugin, but what do you think about like for someone who would want to kind of create one? What do you think?
I think
let me put my Corona developer hat on and take my Corona developer relations hat off for a moment.
Yes,
I've got a boatload of plugins I'd love to make. And in some cases, I think I could successfully bring them either from pure Lua ones or potentially native iOS ones, but I'm going to struggle like hell to bring in anything native Android. And then the second part that's turning me off to it's the documentation process. In trying to navigate, it's a lot to write documentation to support your stuff. So if I build something that's more than a couple of functions, that's a lot of time commitment to be able to write that and document it. We've set up a good platform for support, putting your documentation up using GitHub and stuff, but to get to the point of where you get that documentation in place, for me, is kind of a scary thing.
You still have to write the words, right? I mean, regardless of the system that's used to control it, you still have to come up with the letters all in a sequence.
Right. Now, putting my developer relations hat back on, oh, come on, Rob. You can do it. You've got the ability. Just make it happen already. People would love you for it.
Do it. The documentation is undoubtedly one of the hardest parts. I mean, just why? Because it's the least fun. Because it's like it's not. You're not making this thing. It's like you're writing the instruction manual. And particularly for somebody like me who's incapable of writing briefly. I write these emails at work, and they're always well composed, but they're always way too long, and nobody ever reads them.
Hey, I read your super long emails, and actually put people to your sample app when they submit really bad ones to the store. And say like, hey, this guy has a really awesome sample app. You should do something like this.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, and I tell you, Jason, I think that actually plays out well in your favor because I've read your documentation and it reads extremely well.
I will say I don't know that the style sheet on my site is great for documentation. That's the one thing I sort of wish I could. It's just set up as a blog essentially, and so I do my best with headers and block quoting and other things, but short of writing a new CSS, which I'm not going to be doing anytime soon, I'm making the best of a bad situation in terms of making it easily readable as documentation notes go.
Well, let's talk about what Rob just brought up, supporting Android and iOS. Is that something that you did in your implementations?
For mine, yes, because it was pure Lua. So I wasn't using anything that was platform dependent. So I mean, it works in arguably it could work, for OS 10 or Windows. I suppose it's not something I tout, and I don't know that it's optimized for that. But it's something you could do.
So, Rob, you're saying that you have ideas that would require platform-specific capabilities? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm gonna get off of being muted. Yeah, I mean, just about anything. I mean, look at how the community's been frustrated because there's not an Android contacts plugin. We only have it for iOS. And we have a pretty big Android user base. And I don't think it's fair. Again, this is me personally speaking, but I think most people would agree with this. It's not fair to favor one platform over the other.
Right. And I don't think I'm sure that's not the desire from.
Now, in some cases, it only makes sense to have platform-specific ones, like the iTunes plugin, or what was the one that Sergey did recently that was Android only because it couldn't be done on iOS or iOS.
The vibration.
Yeah, the vibration thing. In that case, where the device is limiting you, then I think it's okay to have platform-specific ones. But when it's capable to be done on both, I think a plugin developer should try to strive to do both platforms. And if even possible, Windows and OS X platforms.
Right.
Plugins shouldn't be something that we necessarily limit people to just being available on the mobile platforms.
So how does that work today? That's a good question. I hadn't even thought about that. So the plugins are specifically for the mobile side of the house, or what?
Well, in a lot of cases, I mean, I think the pure Lua ones will work on all platforms, but anything native has got to be compiled against the object libraries for that particular platform. And where this becomes a bit of a challenge in a lot of cases is somebody like Flurry or Facebook. They don't offer desktop SDKs. They expect the desktops to go through either their REST platform or through JavaScript platforms. So they've never even bothered to produce an SDK you could even compile against. So that limits a lot of things to mobile only, because the things that you might want to use might only have mobile SDKs to compile against. And if you wanted to use the REST libraries, just go ahead and use Network Request and be done with it. And then you can do a pure Lua plugin, I suppose.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense, because those platforms have grown up out of the mobile space, not necessarily the desktop space. At least their focus is probably more mobile. So, interesting.
Yes, I mean, that's one of the most frequent plugin questions that's come up, or questions that's come up on the desktop platforms is, well, why can't I have Flurry? Well, tell Flurry to build a desktop SDK that we can use.
That, and if you build like if you do like if you want to request ads on desktop platforms, desktop users don't want to ads in their apps. It just doesn't really fit.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
How many desktop apps do you use that have ads in them?
Right.
Like none.
Right. Yeah. Well, so that begs the question of do you do it because it's not been done, or do you just do it because it's not a good user experience?
I think it's a terrible user experience. It's
a terrible user experience.
Well, I mean, no, sorry, we're owned by peers. Ads are great, everyone.
Ads are great. Use ads everywhere. Yeah.
But no, I mean, people don't usually want to deal with that.
Right. I agree. I agree totally. And it's funny that you say that, because on Monday, next Monday, we're gonna have Dean Murphy on, and he's going to talk about Crystal, which is a iOS 9 ad blocker, and it's actually the #1 iOS ad blocker at the moment, and the number one that was in that place was Marco Arment's piece, and he actually pulled it because he didn't feel like he didn't feel he said he was winning an award he didn't feel good about. And so we're gonna talk all about that. We're gonna talk about ads and what it means to content producers and what it needs to be, to app developers, and what it means to the
That's
economy as a
really
whole.
Interesting conversation. Usually, when I hear people talking about ad blockers, it's all from the privacy side, the user experience side. I haven't really seen a show dedicated to the content producer sort of side.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and we're going to get his take on it, but typically, at least from a web perspective, not necessarily maybe the mobile app's perspective, but from a content publisher's perspective on the web, ads are one of the very first ways that you can monetize something. But just like with mobile ads, I know, Rob, we've talked about this a lot. People spend a lot of time trying to figure out how they're going to put ads in their app or their game before they actually have a game that's worth people downloading and using. And people do that on the web as well. They try to figure out, how they're going to make money on their site before they even have visitors to their site to make money on. Yeah. So, it's a valid concern. But putting ads on your site, your website, is typically the first way that you can make money, because then you have to grow an audience. Then those ads will pay some amount of money, and then by the time you've grown an audience, though, you can do other things. You can have courses, or you can have books, or you can have paid videos, or you can have products and services that you can offer to cater to the needs of your audience. And then oftentimes, even if you watch This Week in Tech with Leo Laporte, he'll tell you that banner ads don't pay the bills for that program. It's the personalized ads that they do in their programs that pay the bills. And so it's going to be an interesting conversation to see how that actually affects people.
I really wish the app market would have never gone to the free model. Back when people were used to paying for apps, that was an okay thing. But once we went free and tried to do ad supported, it just really killed any hope there. I mean, it's just like web. Nobody goes on the website and expects to pay for content. It's free because if I'm trying to charge you for it, somebody else will be giving it away for free, and it's the same content. Excuse me. With apps, it's a little bit different because my game's different than your game, so there's a different level of enjoyability. But because this ad model has creeped in, I can't charge for my app anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think that what we're seeing, though, is a maturing of advertising. I don't know if you agree with this or not, but banner ads, we all typically tune out banner ads. I mean, when was the last time that you were like, ooh, I gotta try that out, right? You just sort of naturally blank those things out, and it's because they're not overly creative and there's not a lot of value. But I think this is where advertisers and platforms, I'm talking about ad networks and stuff like that, can become a lot more useful to people. And I see this in Fuse, I see this in Chartboost, I see this in what's the other one that does the interstitial ads, video ads, where you can do rewarded content and things like that, where you can actually get the user to interact and have some sort of value, as opposed to just putting a banner ad up and hoping that somebody clicks on it. So I think it's a maturing of the industry, and not necessarily slapping down people's livelihood.
Yeah. Now, we learned a long, long time ago, back in the early 2000s when we were doing online games, that people did tune out those ads. And, really, if you're going to put a banner ad in the middle of gameplay, all you're doing is burning up your advertiser's inventory, because they're getting almost no value for that. And I think that's why you see, a lot of these ad companies that are just doing interstitial ones only, because that's when you actually have an opportunity to engage with the user and try to make sure that developers who are coming from looking at websites where banner ads and 320 by 200s and stuff are all over the place, and you're on one page for a long period of time while you're reading a news article or whatever, that's a completely different interaction than somebody trying to play Flappy Birds. And they're just not going to click on those banner ads in the middle of gameplay. So how you integrate your ads is critical, and I think that's one of the things that Fuse can do for our audience is hopefully help educate them as part of getting their ads integrated.
Yeah,
That's what they've done so far for the companies that have integrated them.
Well, and that's just the being able to have tighter control, being able to have better interactions, being able to tailor things to people. The crazy thing is that in offline models there was really no way to track things, right? You would do things like phone numbers or special coupon codes or whatever to try to get some kind of sense as to where your advertising money was well spent. Online, you can pretty much track things, right? When somebody clicks on something, you can track it from A to B, and what's crazy, I just don't see ad networks doing a whole lot in order to encourage better interactions and be able to show the advertiser that, hey, your money was well spent. So from the advertiser standpoint, they just want to get in front of eyeballs. They want their brands to be recognized, and a lot of times it's easy for them to write a check and create some banner ads and to throw them into a system. And then on the network side of things, it seems like it's really easy for them to say, well, you just need to just give us these banner ad formats. It's really easy. Don't worry, it's not very hard. You just give us these size graphics, and we'll stick it into our system, and we'll make sure that it links to where you want it to go. And that's fine, but it seems like it's the really low. It seems like it's the easiest thing to do, and we all know that sometimes the easiest thing to do is not always the best thing to do. So I think I don't know. I see it as a maturing of things, and I can see that there are examples out there where people do some ads that are really good, really creative, really well thought out campaigns, that we pass around on online and show to our friends and all that kind of stuff like that, and then there's just flashing banner ads that don't really do anything. And the one thing I tell you what, the one interesting thing is I downloaded and installed Crystal for iOS 9, and when I brought up Kevin's recent app, was it Plus 360? Is that the name of it?
360 Plus.
360 Plus. Plus 360.
Okay.
Yeah, plus 360. He's delivering ads. He's got them. Let's see here. Yeah, he's got them on the bottom, and those are Google ads. They're from Google. So it's not blocking ads inside the apps. I don't think that's really the purpose. It's blocking ads in Safari. And
particularly the ones that jump you away. Isn't it the worst when you suddenly you'll wind up in the App Store and you're like, how did I get here? I wasn't.
Yeah. Well, and here's the other thing. Here's the good points that I think I've heard brought up is the fact that ads are being implemented. So we're still online. We're still in a very much a desktop versus mobile. A lot of people are doing mobile first, mobile responsive. but not everybody has caught up to that. And so you wind up with these crazy ads that pop up on mobile devices that have like the X's like off the screen, and then half of the ads over here, and you can't really see what's going on. You have to reload the page in order to be able to get to the content that you want, and it's really crummy user experience. And I think that what Apple is doing, and a lot of conspiracy theorists have said, well, this is a direct attack against Google. Well, maybe it certainly benefits Apple to some degree to kind of kick sand in their competitor's face, but I think it really is more about user experience and people being able to know that they can use Safari without having all this junk, versus maybe using Android and having these same types of ads pop up in their face, right? So again, I think it's more of a maturing of things. If the whole industry was able to deliver ads to devices in a very uniform, very clean, very good user experience sort of way, maybe we wouldn't even be having that conversation. But right now, it's just sort of we're too much of a transition period, and things are just crummy. So, but I don't see those ads being blocked in apps, and if you want to do the conspiracy theorist thing, you'd say, well, wouldn't Apple be hurting themselves by blocking apps, blocking ads, and then having those not show up in apps? And it's not the case at all. Just gonna let that silence hang there for a second. But I don't know. I tell you what I do see though. Here's what I do see. When I go play a game like what was it? The one I was playing the other day. It was it's by Ketchup, published by Ketchup at least, called Magic River. Played Magic River. The very first thing that it did when I opened the app was, well, one, it cross promoted its own in-house. It had its own in-house ad. And cross-promoted its own apps. I think it's genius. I think everybody should be doing that because it makes sense. The very first interaction, the very first thing is, hey, you like this app enough to download it? Download one of our other ones. Or at least make you aware of one of our other ones. We have other apps, by the way. And then the other thing that it did was it gave me an in-game item for free. Like the very first interaction, almost kind of training me to say, hey, here's a gem, right? And then cool. And then after that, the first time that I died, it said, oh, you died. Watch this video to get more in-game stuff or whatever, right? And it was a rewarded video. And at least then that advertisement had value, right? I was getting an in-game item for it. Now whether the advertiser actually is getting the value out of that is arguable, but at least from the consumer standpoint, you're getting something for being presented with an ad. I think that's a decent step in the right direction. What do you guys think about that?
It's a brilliant idea.
Well said. Very well said. It's a brilliant idea. It's a brilliant idea for who? For the publisher, for the consumer, or for the advertiser, or all three? What do you think?
For the elves floating around inside the computer.
For the elves floating around inside the computer. I think it's good for the content producer, for the app developer. They get money. I think it's good for the consumer. They get rewarded. Everybody likes rewards.
Well, yeah, but you're designing your game around like the whole advertisement process, right? I never play old games, which is weird considering the industry that I'm in right now. So I downloaded one that my friend was playing called Clicker Heroes, and like the whole gameplay was centered around like you spending time in that app, clicking on things and like doing in-app purchases, and sort of the way things have gone since we went to free apps, right? Yeah. I don't think anything that like kind of perpetuates that is like good for the user experience.
Well, this clicker thing, and I've not played a clicker game, but I'm aware of it as a. I mean, this is a genre now of games.
Is this it? Clicker Hero? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, that's it.
Okay.
And it's literally just. I mean, it's a button pushing simulator to an extent.
Yes,
correct.
It sounded terrible, but apparently it was popular. I don't.
But here's the thing: it's one of many. This is a at the very least a subgenre and possibly a genre at this point. There are apparently good ones versus bad ones. You know, there are enough of them now that you can say, "Oh, stay away from this one. That's no good. This is the clicker game that you want to be playing," which sort of makes no sense to me. But at the same time, hey, maybe I'm just jealous. Maybe I just wish I'd come up with it. You know.
You're right. Would you have not cashed the Flappy Bird checks? Is that what you're saying?
I most definitely would have. I wouldn't have pulled that thing from the App Store.
Yeah, I know it. Haters gonna hate, baby. Haters gonna hate. That's right.
All right, now I'm going to install Clicker Heroes. I gotta see what you're talking
No,
about.
I am too.
Don't waste your time.
I'm totally installing it.
I will say I got. I think I mentioned this in the Slack channel earlier this week. I was very generously gifted an Apple Watch last week, which is something that I mean, it's a cool gadget. I wouldn't have spent my own money on it. I'm still not sure I would have spent my own money on it, but it makes a heck of a gift. I'll say that much. It's a fantastic gift. But I've actually there are a few things it does really well. One, the little activity thing where it sort of taps you on the wrist once or twice a day and says like, hey, maybe you should stand up and walk around, or it says, hey, you've been doing a really good job standing up and walking around, is kind of awesome. I mean, it's sort of fun and unintrusive and actually a nice reminder. Like, I find it a nice reminder of ways to maybe make myself healthier and better, which is always good. And then two, I tried because I had heard about it, an app that is, it was like a game-ish. It's more of a choose-your-own-adventure story called Lifeline, which is not is an app that was made probably first for iOS, but they took advantage of the watch in really unique ways that made me think if you find creative ways to turn the limitations of the platform into turn the bug into a feature, you can really do cool things. So the idea with this is it's a choose your own story, choose your own adventure book, but it's played out in semi-real time, so it's not instant gratification. It's the story of this person who was stranded on a moon of some planet somewhere, so it's sci-fi, and he or she, then they give the character the name Taylor, which is also kind of cool. How it's it's up to you to determine the gender of this person that you're communicating with, and they're able to communicate with you, and you are their sort of lifeline. So they're, what do I do? Should I do A or do B? And you sort of help them with this. And then when it's time, so if they say, should I do A or do B? And what do A is okay, well, go walk a mile that direction. They say, okay, well, I'll talk to you when I get there. And then that's it. You put it down, you put it away, and then you get a notification. And with the watch, it's just a really cool, it feels like it's Star Trek, right? Because it's a sci-fi thing. Your little communicator on your wrist taps you and makes a little pinging noise, and it says, hey, I have another question. Here's what's going on. And I want to say I responded relatively quickly to when I would get notifications over the course of a weekend. I feel like I made my way through it. But it was really enjoyable, and I think it made me curious to see if there's something for me to make there, something that uses the hardware in a really fun way.
Well, here's the things that I hear when you're talking about this. One is I think that would be really cool to create a spy choose your own adventure type thing, right? Because it's a watch, it's a spy watch, right? And
right.
and one of the strengths of the platform is glances, notifications and glances. So the story would progress. Maybe on the server, kind of like Clash of Clans does, where you've got things happen on the server and then you get pushed information to your phone or to your watch in this case, and you'd have glances, and you'd have little pieces of information that would become available to you, and then sort of helped you to figure out the story, right? And then as part of those glances, you'd have maybe choices like like A or B kind of choices, right? So you want to go, you need to something's happened and you need to get there quickly. Do you take a bus or a car, right? Boop, but you take a car. Okay, you're taking the car, and you should be there in 20 minutes. Boop, and then it just goes away, and you're like, huh, okay. And then maybe later in the day you get another piece of information, right? And you just sort of like, it's not supposed to take up all your time. It's just supposed to be like just an ongoing story.
Yeah.
The second thing that I heard was you talked about the limitations of it. You said it was, if you could get around its limitations. And not to be too heady or a transcendentalist or whatever, but here's one of the things that I saw on Facebook the other day. It's called Buddhist Boot Camp. And one of the concepts that they talked about in there was how do you handle reducing fear in your life. And one of the things that this Buddhist boot camp thing said was that you can't hold two things in your mind at the same time, right? When you have one thing in your head, it pushes out the other. And so if you're focusing on reducing fear, then you're thinking about the thing that you don't want, and what you should really be doing is thinking about the thing that you do want, right? So what it talked about was trying to increase your level of faith that things would happen, right? Things would work out, that you wouldn't have to worry about these things because you just have faith that everything will work out, and by doing that, by increasing the positive aspects of things, you push out or starve this negative thing, right? And eventually you've lowered your fear by not focusing on your fear, but focusing on your strengths. And it's talked about in different ways. Don't focus on what you want, or don't focus on what you don't want. Focus on what you do want, or don't play to your weaknesses. Play to your strengths. Don't try to make yourself taller, right? Just focus on the fact that you can do something else really well, right? You don't try to increase your make your weaknesses better. You just play to your strengths. And so for me, what I hear when people talk about Apple Watch is, I'm like, you know what? Don't try to make Apple Watch the phone. Don't try to make it the tablet. Don't try to make it and don't try to make the TV the tablet or the phone, right? Because that's not what those things are for, and that's not what their strengths are. The Apple Watch, or any watch, I don't think it's really just specific to Apple Watch. I think it's an Android device, Android watch, is that it really does well for glances and notifications, and like you said, tapping you on the wrist to remind you of something. I mean, when Johnny Ive says, this is one of the most personal devices that we've ever created, I don't think that's really good marketing spin, but I think it's also very true, because when I'm in a loud environment and that thing taps me on the wrist, I get that notification when my phone couldn't bridge that gap.
They nailed the physicality of it too. It's subtle, and it feels like somebody's just giving you a little tap.
Yeah. So I would say that to anybody who's looking at that platform, look at what it does really well and try to play to that. And that sounds like that's what these guys have done with this choose your own adventure type thing. They said, hey, you know what? It's not a big screen. It's not something that you want to stare at for a long period of time, but it works really well for choose your own adventure.
Yeah.
So,
And again, I think they flipped what choose your own adventure is, because it forces you. It's not long play. It doesn't let you be long play. It's like, make a decision. We'll get back to you. Go do whatever it is what you were doing.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, it's not Zork, right? Remember the old school Zork, the text-based Zork, where you're like, you're at a reservoir, and you're like, and you see, and then while you're there, you're like, look around, and it says, oh, well, you found an inner tube. Oh, blow it up. Oh, well, you don't have a pump. Oh, there's a pump someplace. Okay, great. I gotta go look for a pump, right? But the whole time you were just like typing out these commands, which doesn't work on this interface. No. It needs to be a pre-scripted sort of choose A or B sort of.
Yeah. No, it's cool though. It's a fun little. It was a fun little diversion that really upped the fun factor for me on the device itself in the first week.
Yeah. Yeah. I've tried to play a couple of games like Connect 4.
Oh, that's fun.
It's crazy. It does, it's like it doesn't. It's not. It's not fun. It's not any fun.
No.
It's not. It's not the same type of like pleasure that you
Yeah.
would get out of. And there's even one game that was like every time you tap the screen, the little character would swipe, and there would be some monster standing in front of him for some reason, and then he would he would like cut the little monster down, but it was based on a number of taps, and then so you would cut his health down slowly over time. So here you are, just tapping on your watch, and I'm like, what's the point of this again?
I mean, at least for me, keeping my wrist in this position for more than
No.
15 seconds is not comfortable.
Yeah. Once you start using the watch for any amount of time, you're like, this interaction right here is not something that you want to do for very long. It's glances and notifications. That's the strength of the platform. Yeah. So for sure. I think there'll be some creative things that'll come down the pipe once the device can do, and we've had this conversation before, when it can do things like make a phone call. I think that'll be really cool.
It can, can't it?
Well, I'm talking about on its own, without the phone
anywhere nearby.
Without the phone anywhere nearby. See,
like
I want
it. You want it with a cellular antenna in it.
I do. I want to go for a run. And I want to be able to I want to be able to communicate from my device, right? So if something happens to one of my kids, break a leg, right? I want to be able to get that on my watch without having to carry my phone. Today I carry my phone like an idiot, right? Because it's all sold with all this activity tracker, and you can do all these great things.
For a run or for a bike ride or something like that, to have that connection with like if you could replace the phone as your music player and your ability to communicate with that on a run or a bike ride, that's awesome.
Yeah. Well, see, you can load up the music on your watch, so you can to some extent.
At the moment, can you? Can you
if you
transfer music to it so that you can then.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have a Bluetooth.
Well, that's where you have to have these. You have to have a Bluetooth headset, wireless Bluetooth headset.
But can it pair Bluetooth with? Yeah. See, this is me learning about. I haven't really bothered.
Yeah. Get yourself. Go on Amazon and get yourself a pair of wireless Bluetooth headphones.
Oh, that is cool then.
And then you can pair it, and I mean it works great for. And then once you've used the phone and the watch together, over a period of time, I don't know exactly how long the period of time is, but it tells you the first time you ever try to use it. That if you use the phone with the watch, it will help increase its accuracy, and then eventually you don't have to carry the phone anymore. So you can go on a run, track your time, track your rate, all that other business, get your heart rate, listen to your music, do all those things without the phone. But if you want to stay connected to the world, you still have to bring the phone.
Yeah. So. Well, and I think the cell plans now are getting really interesting. The way that it's $10 to add a tablet to your plan or whatever. And when you figure the amount of data that it's using would probably be so small, it's conceivable that down the line it'll be, once they build one of these things with a SIM card slot, okay, well, $4 a month, add a watch to your plan. If you're jogging on the regular and this will allow you to do that, that's not a bad deal.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Exactly. Well, I think it's going to eventually that's going to play out, like you say. There's part of me that would love to just have a tablet with a Wi-Fi, with a radio in it, right? And then just not have the phone. I just have the tablet. I wouldn't even have the phone. But then there's times when you want the phone, right? So right now what I do is I have the phone with the plan, and then I just pair that. I just do a personal hotspot and then use the tablet with that.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, there could come a day where every device has.
You could always Google Voice.
Radios. Oh yeah. Well, I'm just talking about form factor, right? There may be times when you just don't want to carry a tablet, into which you can put a phone in your pocket. So, which is probably why we have all these different form factors anyway. So.
It's true.
All right, guys. Well, it's 10 o'clock. I'm gonna head off and do other things. But I appreciate you guys being here. It's fun. I love talking about this stuff. And Stephen.
Stephen, I always feel guilty that I talk and you don't.
I have nothing to say.
That's not true. You have so much more to say. I'm just jabbering on about my new toy.
When it's not technical, I just kind of zone out.
Yeah. Plus, he's got the nightclub going on back there. The nightclub and the dance studios.
I think the rain scared them off.
Yeah. It's a quiet night. You better get some sleep then.
I could use it now.
For a change.
That's if we end up doing a face-to-face one of these days, karaoke should definitely be on the menu.
All right. Have a good night, guys.
All right. Good night.